Yo, today's episode is on creativity. I'm a creative through and through. And what I love most about the ability to create is that it can happen in any and every aspect of our lives. I work specifically with creatives and entrepreneurs as a mindset coach because it's super important to me. If you're a creative, you are a creator. And all of us are creators. No matter what we do, we have to put some pieces together, even if it's mathematical, even if it's scientific, engineering, architectural. There's always some element of creativity that we have to access. When I was a kid, my go-to was writing. I had a small rap group that consisted of my twin sister and some of my cousins. And I wrote all the lyrics. As a matter of fact, our namesake for the group was from a song that I wrote that was called Nickels and Dimes. I don't remember it now. All I can tell you, it was probably the wackest thing that I've ever put pen to paper on. But that's okay, because the beautiful thing about creativity is that it evolves. And you have to be a part of it and consistently do it in order to evolve it. Very rarely do you come out the womb ready to be the ultimate creator. All of the folks that we see and love and admire had once been, at some point or another, even if it was in kindergarten, a crappy artist. And the other piece to creativity for me is that who I am and how I see and view myself is 100% creative. And what I mean by that is, if who I believe myself to be is 100% inventive and creative, then I get to make this up any and every point of my life that I'm in. I remember this first short story I ever wrote, and I showed it to one of my relatives, and there was something that was said, and all I remember that it was crumpled up in their hand, and it became crumpled up in mine as well, and then transferred into my spirit. And with that experience, it made me doubt my creativity. And then on the other hand, I'm at school and I write my first poem, and my fourth grade teacher tells me how awesome it is and how wonderful it is, and that I'm going to be a writer one day. I had this on this side that said, "This is stupid." I had on this side, "This is the greatest thing I've read for a fourth grader." Now, I'm sure the next fourth grade, there was another standout. But for me, I was a standout in that class. And so there was this juxtaposition. Am I good at this thing that I want to do, or am I not? That's something that only I can discover, only you can discover. Not one person can tell us anything. And the only real opinion that counts is how we view ourselves. So I always knew that I was creative. I couldn't help myself. There's always going to be somewhere where I'm writing out something. I'm writing out a poem. I'm writing a short story. I'm writing whack-ass raps. I enjoy music as well. So you'll see me with several instruments. I've got a acoustic guitar. I've got a bass guitar. I've got a djembe. I've got a bongo. None of these things have I mastered, but I've got them. Something that I can mess with and pluck some chords or hit the top of a drum and feel like there's something going on there. There's some rhythm. There's something that I'm co-creating with what already is, because there's nothing new under the sun. So every time we create, we're simply adding on to what is already out here in the world. That's where some of us get messed up. And I can really attest to originality being something that can both cause harm to a creator's ability to create, and also be the thing that makes them the greatest artist of their decade or century with that canon of work. So for me, I've always had this really big hang up on originality, and I can call it a hang up now because I know that it made me stop and start several times over. It's made me say, it's something else out there like that, so let me chill. And it wasn't until I learned that this is a part of the construct, the deliberateness of not recognizing that everything has been done before. At this point, I come around in the 70s, listen, everything's been done at this point. You got our parents who were boomers, and I always say, wow, what a life, especially for parents of the African diaspora, Black Americans. specifically, and then of course first and second generations of anyone of the diaspora. But if you were born in the 50s, grew up in the 60s and the 70s when you're in your 20s, and you go from segregation to integration, you go from getting your ass whipped by anybody that caught your ass on the wrong side of the tracks, so you constantly running, you constantly working to survive. You have the hot summer of 1967, but then you also got free love and psychedelics. You got Jimi Hendrix and Sly and the Family Stone. You got Funkadelics, and I have all of these records. You got disco. You have all of these artists that are out here doing the damn thing, and you're just watching, and you're seeing how great we can be. Because now, every time you turn on the television, you got some type of representation of the art that we can create if only we get the opportunity to do more than survive. So I think about my creativity in terms of this runway of artists and creators who dare to be every and anything that they could be in this space, and how bold and daring. You thinking about Sun Ra. Like, he literally said, I'm an alien creating art for the masses so that you can understand. You got James Baldwin and Toni Morrison, who's so dense you have to read the same pages 3 to 4 times just to finally think that you got it, so that you can move on to the rest of the book. These are all the people that I admire, and as I'm growing up and I'm on the exterior of creativity, starting to believe that I can't be an artist, a parent, a partner, and survive at the same time. It's not possible. So let me just go survive, continuing my close proximity to creativity. I've been around Grammy-winning artists, Grammy-nominated artists, in relationships with them. I've been in the spaces with giants of industries, sat with them, talked with them, always living vicariously through the art that I consume, whether it was the film or music or writing. Always in this orbit of who I one day hope to be, but my creativity just kept getting pushed further back. I mentioned the first novel I wrote, which was really my way in to the publishing industry. And I got some looks. I got some opportunities there, but again, I was realizing that I'm writing and not really doing it from a sovereign place. It's still with that image and that reminder of when I showed my work to someone that I expected to at least encourage me, and instead they shit on it. And because they shit on it, it didn't even matter what my 4th grade teacher said, because all I remember was the person who I really wanted to believe in me the most said it's stupid. And that's on me. That's why I talk to the creators that I know now, whether they're a generation after me, Gen Zs, millennials, and I encourage folks, now if it's not good, I'm gonna share that with you. If I see that you're creating inside of a container and I can tell that there's something else there that you are unwilling to be with in the moment, I'm gonna have a conversation with you. That's why I work with creators and entrepreneurs, because I understand the things that we go through to get our brilliance and our creativity off of our hard drive, at this point off of our notes app, and we gotta sift through that place inside of creativity where you're walking around in the dark and throwing shit at the wall, wondering what will stick for those folks out there, what they're gonna like. I recently watched my daughter, artist name is Reese, on with Tyler the Creator. It was an Instagram video, and my daughter is one that I can say I had a true hand in supporting her creativity, even despite what I learned and how I grew up. And when I wrote my first book, she was a baby at that point, but when I wrote the first book out of the Advisor to the Throne series, within that same year, I was editing her first poetry book. I wrote a book, she wrote a book. Then I did Afros and Audio Podcast Festival, and she started doing events for her art and photography. And I realized I had a direct impact on her idea of creativity, but I'm not the blueprint. And she says that in there, and I love that she makes that distinction, that, yeah, I saw someone else be creative in my life, but they're not the blueprint, because what I'm doing don't have nothing to do with what they're doing. And it's the same thing for me. What I'm doing has nothing to do with what she's doing. My son, who's a great artist, if you see in my videos, anyone who has a Patreon or Spotify video, you'll see this really dope image to my left shoulder up at the top that has these pyramids in it. And my son did that. He's a creative. And then not to leave out my eldest son, who is also a creator, who has my two sweetest grandbabies on the planet. And he's an engineer. And again, you can not think that's creative if you want to, but you have to have a mindset. I used to be the assistant of a structural engineer before I got into my pharmaceutical career. And I worked on AutoCAD. So I had to follow these mock-ups, and this is AutoCAD 20 plus years ago. This ain't the AutoCAD of today. So it was really some work just to get these lines where they needed to be and make it into a 3D structure. That took some creativity. It's taken me some time to fully embrace the fact that I'm a creative person. Like, that's who I am. Yeah, I'm the founder of Afros and Audio Podcast Festival. Yes, I've had professional corporate jobs and careers, but more than anything in this world, I'm a creator. I love to write. I love to pull these podcast episodes together. I was telling a friend of mine who called me about the first 3 parts of this podcast, and he was telling me how it affected him, and he's also wondering, like, how do you get these stories out of you with the sound and all that? And I'm like, bro, I'm in my bag right now. This is the most creative that I've been able to be in a while besides my writing, and I can quite frankly say that creating saves my life. During that 5th year that I was talking about, I wrote my book, Say Less. It's not only a physical book, but then there's the animated ebook. And then there's a soundtrack that I asked my homeboy to put together for me. I'm like, watch the Say Less animated series. I needed him to get fully immersed into what I was creating. And I asked him to provide a soundtrack for that. And he did. He understood the assignment. He did that shit wonderfully. Shout out to my man, Oshem. Lovers of Now is the account on SoundCloud. Go check it out. He puts out some dope playlists. But he created this soundtrack specifically for Say Less, Call It Justice. And that's how my mind works. It doesn't just work in one realm. It's gotta be a multimedia aspect to it. I gotta go all out because it took me so long to get back to my creative self that now every time I create, I'm like, oh, it's gotta be crazy. It's gotta go hard. So even this, the Grumpy Wizdom podcast, I'm creating the podcast, of course. And in that, I take the time and I edit it so that the stories are succinct and concise. And once I get the story down, now I can begin to think about the elements and the sound effects. Okay, what sound effect will go here? And less is more, in my opinion. So what can be here? What can be there? Okay, I hear this happening at this moment. But other than that, I'm gonna leave it alone. And then I'm gonna let the music that I create on Suno be how I develop the score. And all of this in my mind is working at the same time that I'm laying down these stories. And it's a beautiful thing. Like, I'm in my bag right now. I love this shit. Now that I've started Grumpy Wizdom, it's gonna be hard to pull me off this motherfucker because I am enjoying this process so much. And it almost feels like it's come full circle for me. Like, I've been in podcasting and I started out with the Fussins where I wrote, directed, and cast it and put it out to the world. That was in 2017. We're almost 10 years later. And I'm just now coming back to the mic in a way that doesn't feel status quo. I also do the Heard Afros and Audio interview series, and that's something that I wanted to do to connect with the community we're building with Afros and Audio. So I already know that podcasters are some of the dopest creators out here. And you gotta be bold to get on this mic, record it, and push and distribute it. There's mad people right now who are listening to the sound of my voice in this moment, and they have episodes of podcasts recorded, and they have yet to push it out into the world. I know, because I've been there. And that's why I coach creatives and entrepreneurs, because I know what we be going through. I know where our mind takes us when we are worried about the critique of folks who are still on the sidelines. And even those who aren't on the sidelines, they might be doing their own thing, but they're not doing what you're doing. They don't know what it took for you to get here. They don't know what it takes for you to stay. I talk to podcasters all the time, or folks who write, and only because of the outside world do they either not do what they set out to do, and or they quit prematurely because they're not getting the feedback or the love or the accolades or whatever it is that they're seeking. So with that being said, if you're seeking anything externally before you create, then you got the game switched up. There's this quote by Howard Thurman that I have in one of my books. It's either in volume 2 or volume 1 of Advisor to the Throne, but I love quotes. And Howard Thurman wrote, there are 2 key questions individuals should always ask themselves. 1 is, where am I going? And 2 is, who will go with me? And he said, if you ever get those 2 questions in reverse, you're screwed. He didn't say you're screwed. He was much more eloquent than that, but you're screwed. Because you can never count on what someone's going to say on the outside about your hard work, your inner world. Who are they? How can they? You can go to an art museum right now. You can stand in front of a painting, and there'll be 7 different people standing there looking at the same thing with different interpretations of what the artist meant or thought when they created that piece. The only way you actually know is if there's a artist statement on the side. Okay, this is about this, and this is why they chose that meaning, but you can't, why they choose that texture, why they choose that color, why do they choose that ominous image in the foreground of the painting where everything else is prominent. My son is a painter, and I think it's the dopest thing in the world. One of my closest friends is a painter. I think painting and drawing is so imaginative, because how you go from what's in your head to a canvas is beyond me. I never had that skill set. And I guess it's the same as writing, because you're developing something in your head and you're putting it out on paper. That's cool, man. That's cool. And no one out here in this world can understand the mind of the artist who created that piece of work. I can sit down with you, I can talk to you about it, I can share what's on my mind, but I've created under great stress, under some serious duress. Like I said, creativity has saved my life. I might not share that part of the story. I might tell you what I was feeling when I was creating this page, because Say Less, like I said, it's design, it's motion, it's the words on the page, and I did all of that out of my head. And sure, I can tell you what I was thinking about when I did that. Some of that work I had created years before and just kept it on my hard drive. Like I said, never saw the light of day, or I scribbled it in my notebook, and I had to go back and look at some of the places that I knew I had written these statements and then refine them for this final book, Say Less. So every year, at all times, I've been in this space of creating my work and then iterating it for a final piece. And my process is longhand. If I can write down anything and just keep writing, and then when it's time to lay it down, now I'm refining it. Now my mind is putting it all together. That's my process. And I'm also a person that can think of things at any time when I'm running, showering, watching television, and all of a sudden there's a download comes to me and I got to stop everything. I got to move it forward. I think that suppressing those aspects of ourselves where we decide that the world is too crowded, that the market is too saturated, that nobody wants to hear what we have to say, or no one wants to see what we create, is the work of the devil. And I'm not saying that from a religious context. It's nasty work for us to leave that something that came out of the ethers into our brain isn't worthy of being out in the world. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can take this in their mind and put it out on a canvas and present it. Not everyone can do that. I know I can't draw, and I'm not a painter. So I couldn't do that. I came to my friend here, Conscious. That's my homie El Stefan. Behind me, Ralph Ellison wrote one of my favorite books in the world, Invisible Man. I always think about, and again, I work with clients about this, what if the person that you respect so much also decided to stay quiet, chose to not put their work out there, and you admire them? What if they decided that too? And then you wouldn't have an opportunity to look at them and think that you're a whole ass failure because you aren't who you think they are. That's something to think about as a creative. All of us have access to choice and to decide whether or not we want to put our work out or not. They could have not, but they did, and now you look up to them, and now you say, that's my favorite artist. Why can't that be you? Why can't that be me? Why can't that be us? All of us who have this creative desire in our heart and get downloaded with information and visions of ourselves that don't necessarily have to come to you if it wasn't for you. One of my homies, one day we was rapping about creativity, and he's a musician, and he also likes to paint. And we were talking about my philosophy that if it came to you, it's yours. You can realize it. Like, it's 8+ billion people in this world. That means that there's 8+ billion other individuals that could have been given the same vision that you received, but you received it. Doesn't that mean it's yours? And doesn't it mean that you came on earth already with the ability and capabilities to realize any vision and dream that you receive personally? And he just piggybacked off of that. Yeah, man, he's like, somebody who's in an apple pie baking contest, that's their jam. Like, they're the ones that are up at night thinking about the cinnamon and what type of apples they're going to use and how long to bake and all that. That's their whole mindset. Race car driver, that's what's on his mind, her mind. So when we as creatives have a book idea or a vision for something, we get to honor that and believe that we wouldn't have received that idea. You wouldn't have received that podcast idea or that short story or that vision of the colors that you can put on a blank canvas. Creativity is one of the most amazing gifts that any of us can have. It takes us outside of ourselves. It alchemizes the constructs of survival and living within the confines of career paths and academia. Not that academics aren't creatives, but some of us know that the more academic your creativity gets, academia takes over. And so there's some folks who are in academia, but they choose to separate that completely, because if not, the authenticity starts to wear off, because in those worlds, everything is assessed. Right? You're getting a grade for it. That's assessment. So you're always thinking about what you're writing and what you're putting out there, because the construct is critique and assessment from someone and somewhere. And the freer that you can be inside of that, the better off you are. My last book is called Take What's Yours, Becoming a Liberated Creator. And it's based off these 5 intentional principles that I begin to use in my framework for the creatives and the entrepreneurs that I've been working with for the past almost 10 years. The 5 intentional principles are very basic. It's create, consume, elevate, rest, and contribute. Not in that specific order, but they all inform themselves at some point. The create part is obviously the biggest aspect of it, becoming a liberated creator, being able to not only create the bodies of work that you want to create, but also create your life inside of it. I always thought it was the funniest thing, and it was funny to me when I realized that I'm a creator who doesn't see the opportunity for creating the life that I want. Like, those two things are separate. So as I'm creating my work and I have this vision of who I am as an artist, as a creator, as a writer, I can't see how to create my life. That's also a blank canvas. That's also a story that hasn't been written yet. Consumption, and man, this world is changing so much where our thumbs are just the only thing that's moving, and we're getting these 1 to 8 second bites of other people doing whatever the hell they're doing. It runs the gamut at this point. We have so many streaming platforms, whether it's audio, visual, we have events, we have all these things that we have access to right now. What a time to be alive. But at the same time, when we do more consuming than we do creating, then all we're doing is consuming what someone else has created, while we remain dormant in our own creativity. And the consumption piece is consuming with intentionality, right? Looking at it for inspiration, looking at it from a point where you are inspired enough to get out of your way and do something with the gift and talents that you have. So then we get to the elevate part, where I offer that we challenge ourselves to do more, Kaizen, as I spoke about in another episode. Go a little bit further, get a bit more daring and bold, embody courage, and challenge yourself to elevate what you put out in the world day after day. There was a time, oh man, this was years ago, but it was me coming out of my shell and saying, you know what, I'm gonna create 100 pieces of content on my Instagram for 100 days. One, I didn't know how long 100 days was. Let's just go there with it. Like, does it ever end? That's how I was feeling. Because every day I committed to putting one thing on my Instagram account. I was doing photography at the time. I was writing. I was showing off some of the poems that I had written then and now. Every single day for 100 days, I was putting something out there, and it drove me nuts because I started feeling obligated to do it, not by anyone. I don't think people paid attention to what the hell I was doing for years, up until 2 years ago when I was diagnosed with ADHD. I had no idea. And so any routine, habit, and constraints start to drive me nuts. I completed the 100 because I said it, and like I said, I have a high value, and if I say something, then I got to do it. But I was sure glad when that 100 days finally was up, because then I probably didn't touch social media for the next 100 days. In this time, I challenged myself, right? I don't care what people think about it. I don't even care what I feel about it. I'm just going to do it every day. And one way to push myself further, to challenge myself to do something I hadn't done before. And then you got contributing to other folks, getting out the way. Not centering yourself means that you're always thinking about you, not the fact that there's people out here that are waiting on you to come out the shadows. One of my biggest philosophies is that your greatness is not about you, and somewhere, someone is waiting on you to realize that, because you become their possibility. The longer we hang back and we're afraid to move our inner worlds out, you're holding up the line. You wouldn't be who you are. You wouldn't have the thoughts that you have or the ideas that you come up with if you weren't meant to lay it down. You'd be thinking about apple pies. Maybe not, but you get what I'm saying. And then you have rest, because we got to rest to recharge. Rest is the opposite of survival. And we have to learn to rest our minds, rest our bodies, and rebel against the belief that we've got to grind it out. Because some of us create in desperation. And when you create in desperation, it's not authentic. You're once again thinking about what you need and who's going to pay attention. And that won't result in you putting out your best work. The creative process is a exercise in curiosity. Let's see what I can do if I commit some time to this. Let's see what happens if I show the world, look what I can do. What will happen if I get consistent around the thoughts and ideas that I have, making sure that in some way they don't get stuck in my overthinking and my fears and the doubt that I learned somewhere along the way. See, I started to realize that if I wanted to fly, and not only if I wanted to fly, that I wanted to be possibility so that my youthdom could fly as well, then I was going to have to get this dirt off my wings. Like, I was going to have to shake off the self-doubt, the survival mode, the scarcity, the lack of confidence around who I am as a creator. I was going to have to do that. There wasn't no two ways around it. And that's something that, again, we all have access to. And it takes some work. I've been to therapy, I've had coaching, and I've tried things on. And each time I've noticed that I've gotten a little bit more braver. Each time that I decided, okay, I wrote this book, and now this book is published and it's out there for anybody who wants to read it. Every time that I step to a mic, whether I'm a guest on a podcast or I'm doing my own thing, or I'm creating in this arena on my own, Grumpy Wizdom, it's gotta be aligned with my wildest dreams about who I am and who I get to be. If only I say yes to the ideas that come up in my head, I say yes to the fact that it wants to come out. All right, let's get in the lab. Let's sit down at this microphone and say your piece. Let's get at the keyboard and write what it is that you gotta say. That takes courage, sure. But who are we if we're not capable of accessing courage when we need it the most? You get to go too. What do I mean by that? Everyone that you see in this world that you say, man, one day that'll be me. Or, I really like them. I wish I had that much belief in myself. You don't know nothing about them. You know something about you. If who you believe yourself to be and who you are can be created and invented at any moment that you choose, then why not choose your creativity? What you waiting on? The urgency is in not allowing yourself to leave this earth with all of this magic stuffed up in your head and your heart. If you're scared, do the work to get unscared. If you got shit to unpack, just like I had shit to unpack it already. Let's go. You're holding up the line. Creativity is not only saved my life, but it's my motivating force. It's what I know I have when I have nothing else. The podcast that I did, the Turnaround Podcast, about my homeboy, Stuart Squirt Holly. He was a basketball player. He went pro internationally. And his story is that he had legal issues as a kid and lost his opportunities to go D1 or go NBA pro. The one thing he said he had in the juvie yard, in the prison yard, in the streets, in the hood, is he had this love for basketball. And that love for basketball has kept him, no matter what was going on at home or in his life. No matter what setbacks, disappointments occurred, basketball was always there. And I felt that story because that's the same way I feel about being a creative. Your greatness isn't about you. Your talent, your gift, the idea that you have that you want to put out in the world, but you just, for some reason, whether you think it's not original enough or that it's saturated already, or who cares because nobody knows your name and you're going to be coming out of left field. All that stuff that gets caught up in the head where we begin to overthink our process and what we can put out in this world. It's not about you. You were given that. And that's not in a religious aspect. I'm not religious. You were gifted that ability to see what's not in physical form yet, to shape, to mold something out of nothing. You were gifted that ability. And what you gonna do? Be afraid of your own genius? Doubt its significance? Or push yourself beyond the limiting beliefs that this world has deliberately placed in your head so that you can go and do the opposite of who you're meant to be. And you fold and you quit prematurely and you go do safe shit and you're unwilling to be seen, to be heard, to be celebrated. I know I live that. But to that, I say, fuck that. It's time out for that. You get to go too. Because when you go, there's somebody right behind you that sees you. I'm like, damn, one day I'm gonna be so bold as to put my work out just like you. I want art, something beautiful, like the exposed photograph of a sunchild staring wistfully beyond an endless ocean that hangs upon an art gallery wall. I need passion reminiscent of Basquiat paintings in your eyes, the passion before heroin corrupted his desire for life. I haven't lost my desire for art in you. I need to hear the language of poetry drip from your mouth mindlessly, unpremeditated thoughts flowing naturally, and your touch should be the texture of sculpture clay as we mold one another into our very own visions of heaven. Then instinctively emblazon my portrait in your heart forever. Unforgettable. I want to hear a sentimental mood of Duke Ellington falling from your lips as your tenderness motivates me to weep endlessly. I need to feel Elvin Ailey inspired motion between our bodies as if he choreographed our every dip. I want art, and I need you, lover, beautiful enough to create it. This has been Grumpy Wizdom. I'm Talib Jasir, and until next time, peace. Hey yo, if this episode sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Follow or subscribe, rate the show, drop a review, and pass it on. Want to see the episode videos? Become a member of the Grumpy Wizdom Inner Circle on Patreon to unlock exclusive content, early access, and a fresh scene every 3 episodes. Join now at patreon.com/grumpywisdom. To explore more of my creative work or connect professionally, head to talibjasir.com. And podcast fam, if you create, produce, or move in audio, don't miss the 7th annual Afros in Audio Podcast Festival, October 16th through the 19th in Baltimore. Details at afrosinaudio.com. All links are in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Let's ride.